Curtis, man, what's going on?
What's going on, buddy? It's that time of the week again.
Dude, we're live in your bar right now.
Can you believe it?
No, I
It
can't.
only took episode 8 for this to happen.
Episode 8, and it's been about a whole year since I've actually seen you.
It has. It's been crazy, man.
Who's counting? It's been a fast year.
You know, I used to be a regular in my bar, and you guess you regularly come by once a year now.
Yeah, once a year. It used to be every weekend. All right, hey, I got a joke for you.
All right, let's hear it.
Why can't a nose be 12 inches?
Why is that?
Because then it'd be a foot.
You know why you should never iron a 4-leaf clover?
Oh, why?
It is terrible to press your luck.
What kind of flower grows on your face?
You got me.
Tulips.
Tulips. Where does a pirate go to buy his hooks?
I don't know where.
Secondhand store.
Oh, you got me. You know, we're going to have to get corrected tonight.
What do you want to talk about tonight?
I think there's a new anti-theft car device out on the market. You ever heard of it?
You know, I think I have. I think it came about in the late 2000s here.
It did. It did. The new generation of kids, right?
Absolutely. I don't want to say the millennials, but maybe the newer generation.
I know you deny being a millennial.
I'm not a millennial.
You are a millennial.
I'm not a millennial.
Yeah. You hear this. He's denying this.
I have the right to refuse.
You know, our fan base is all millennials right now. You know that, right?
There's nothing wrong with being a millennial. I'm just not one.
Curtis is knocking the millennials. What is that anti-theft car device?
You know, I would say that it would be considered a standard gear shifter.
Can you explain what that means? Some people might not know.
You know, it was back in the days when you had to manually shift your transmission from first through most of the time fifth gear in reverse. There was no park. Park was neutral with the emergency brake on.
That is true. And to put it in reverse, you couldn't just pull the knob down.
Nope. You had to pull the push in on the clutch and pull the knob back and to the right.
Yeah. And people might not know what a clutch is.
It's another pedal that you had 3 pedals on the ground, if you believe that. How much more confusing could it possibly get?
Yeah. And you couldn't just put the key in and turn the ignition to start it.
Nope. You also had to press in on that clutch to do that.
Yeah. You know, that was the first vehicle I learned to drive, actually. It wasn't even an automatic.
What type of car was it?
It was a 1995 Ford F-150.
Oh, my goodness. And whose car was it?
That was my pops, man, my old man's. Dude, I bet he let me drive that thing, I bet, starting when I was 12.
Okay.
So we'd go out doing our hunting, whether it was, ducks or geese. And we get out on these roads out east where nobody's around. And I'd ask, hey, can I drive? Be like, yeah. Because I already kind of had an idea of how it would go, because it was a single cab bench seat truck growing up. So there was no back seat in this thing. So
right.
When I was a kid, I was riding in the middle. So I always had the idea, because it was hitting right between my legs every time he's shifting.
Yep.
So
you always felt like you're in the way, right?
Yep. And so every time he'd shift, I'd just be like, hey, I want to do it. So as we're driving, I got to shift while he drove. So I'd learn to go from first to second, third, fourth, that way, all the way through. And then when I got 12, 13 years old, we'd get on these backcountry roads, and it's where I started. And it's not easy.
No, it isn't. It takes a lot of coordination.
Yeah, you got to be left foot and right foot coordinated to be able to do this. And not enough gas and too much clutch, maybe not a good thing at times.
Using your left foot, your right foot, and your right hand all at the same time, you're doing different tasks.
Yep, you got to use all 4.
Yeah, and you got to hold the steering wheel.
I don't think many people can do that now. But anyways, we got back on these back roads, and if your timing's not right between both your feet, you get to jumping a lot back and forth, or you stall. And if you don't know what a stall is, it just basically kills the engine, right? Mm-hmm. So then you got to go through the process again, and learning that, I can't tell you how many times, I couldn't even get it to roll without killing the engine. But once I finally got it going, I could get into first and second And then the smoother it gets, the faster you get going. It's so much easier. But if you can start first, I always found it like,
You're good.
yeah, like once you got into second, like you were smooth sailing from third to
Yeah.
fourth to
And
fifth.
once you get moving, you're not going to stall the car.
Yeah. So we get on these backcountry roads, and I finally learned to get up and get going. And like I said, I'm like 12 or 13 at this time, and there's a hairpin turn, a 90-degree, like I kind of told back in episode, I think 2,
Mm-hmm.
you know, with our buddy Joe.
In the same spot.
No, this was further east. And I just remember I'm going like 50, right? Like I got it up to speed, and it's just us, and I'm going 50. And my dad looks at me and he goes, "How fast you going to take this turn?" I said, "I don't know, about 30. And this is a 90-degree turn. And he goes, 30? You better fucking not. And so
I could just hear him.
you better think that over again. So I get to this corner, but I didn't know how to downshift either. So I brake and I stalled out, right? Because I didn't know about downshifting either. So those are all the keys and pieces to this. And so as I got going, he used to teach me in a 4-wheel drive low because it was easier to get
Mm-hmm.
in first
Get
gear.
moving.
Yeah. So we used to go over to our old work spot right there in the parking lot at Field 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to drive circles around that parking lot because there used to be no parking bricks there.
Mm-hmm.
It was just open. I don't know if you remember that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I learned. What about you?
Yeah, that's pretty good. I learned how to drive. I had a little Ford Ranger that my mom and dad helped me buy. Mine was automatic though, so it doesn't count as a stick shift. But I can assure you that I gave my dad, probably both of my parents equally, but my dad more so. Plenty of good scares in that truck. One time I pulled out in front of this old lady. And it was on a busy road coming off of a not so busy road. So I pulled out in front of her, and she's probably going 50 miles an hour. And my dad got in the tuck and roll position in the passenger seat. And by the time she's blowing her horn at us and flipping me off, and by the time he sat back up, he took his hat off and threw it in the floor and went, "Well, fuck, son." So we get going and we get up next to this lady at the light, and she's just mean mugging me, and it was all my fault. And he was calling her a grouchy old kraut bitch and all kinds of stuff, and she didn't even do anything wrong. It was funny. But my first experience driving a stick shift was at my job right after I started working on the grounds crew at Park and Rec. And in my job interview, they had asked if I knew how to drive a standard transmission. And I said, "Oh yeah, that's no problem at all." And my goal was to learn how to drive one before I actually had to drive one. We had at the time 2 trucks, and a bunch of utility vehicles. And most of the time I drove the utility vehicles or the automatic transmission truck. Well, this one day my boss at the time comes to me and says, "Hey, hop in the truck. You're going to come with me." So I jump in there. I don't know where we're going. And little did I know that I was going with him to a mechanic shop to pick up his van that was being worked on. So he jumps out of the truck and goes, "All right, I'll see you back at the shop." And we're probably 5 miles away from the shop at this point. And I had never driven a standard in my life. I knew the basics to it. And I will tell you that it was the scariest 5-mile drive of my entire life. I stalled it in the middle of the street, coming out of the parking lot.
The panic that sets in when you get
Oh,
that
God,
intersection.
dude, it's terrible. And when it stops and all you can think of is, oh, shit.
Yep.
You got to reteach yourself how to drive a standard while everybody's waiting on you to get out of the goddamn way.
Yep.
It's something, man.
There used to be oh man, there was a hill somewhere in town. I don't remember where the hill was. Oh, it was on Academy. Remember, the big hill on
Oh,
Academy?
that steep hill right there by
The old Red Lobster.
yeah, yep.
And so when I would drive, when I got my permit, that hill used to scare the shit out of me. So, like, if I saw the light was red at the top of the hill, by the gas station up there, and I think they were used car lots at the time.
Yeah. Would you pull over?
No, so the light would turn red. I would downshift into second gear, and I would creep up that motherfucker until it turned green.
People behind you
Yeah.
getting pissed.
I mean, what were you gonna do? Like, so I'd downshift into like second gear and just like run it up the hill at like 10 miles an hour.
What's
So-
this old man doing? Damn it.
So when the light turned green, it was so easy when you're in second. I would just gun it, and then so like I would make it through the light at that point because I didn't want to get on that hill and be stopped because
And then roll backwards and smoke somebody.
yeah, or
Yeah.
keep stalling or continually stall because
Mhm.
on that hill you start to roll backwards, and you got to give more gas.
And that is the worst part too in one of those is when you're on a hill and you have to take the vehicle out, you have to take your foot off of the brake, which is keeping it from rolling down the hill, to apply the clutch to be able to get it to go in gear.
Yeah,
There's a spot in there where if you don't get something going, you're going to roll down the hill backwards and get in a wreck.
Yep. And so I used to do that every time, probably from when I was like 15, 16 till I probably was like 18
Yeah,
years
dude,
old.
I don't blame you. It was terrible. I remember driving up there a few times in that stick shift too, and I used to just hope and pray that the light was green every time. I think if it was red when I got up there, I'd have to pull over and wait for it to turn green.
Come on, you had to give it to me though. That was a good idea.
That's a great idea.
But yeah, sheer panic used to sit in on that hill.
I can
Like,
just imagine you creeping up the hill in that Ford F-150. 14,000 cars behind
oh
you,
God, man.
honking their horns.
Yep. But you know what? Like, what were they going to do anyways? They were going to stop at the light no matter what. You know? Like, yeah. It was one of those things. What was your very first vehicle?
My very first vehicle was a 1988 Ford Ranger, and it was like one of the first years that it actually was a fuel injected engine. So it was a V6. It was a little, like a 2.9 liter V6. So not real big, but I had bragging rights that I had a V6 in a small truck.
Yeah.
But man, I took that thing places that a 2-wheel drive Ford Ranger should probably not go, but it made it there, and it made it through some stuff.
Well, let's hear about that.
We went camping up to Tarryall Reservoir one time, and you've been up there. You know, it's all kind of primitive camping. It's all trails, a lot of 4-wheel drive
That
trails.
was one of my favorite lakes growing up.
My cousin had a truck that was 1 year newer, I believe, and we had these the bed topper camper shells on the beds.
On the Ford Ranger?
Yeah. And we'd fixed them up, put carpet back there so we could use it as a place to camp and sleep overnight.
Oh, you guys were spooning?
Oh, yeah.
Dude.
Nah,
And that
I don't-
little Ford Ranger, dude, what? Those
Hey,
beds couldn't have been 6
There were
foot
2
long.
trucks, pal.
Okay. All right. I
One
missed that part.
one for each of us.
Okay.
And then, smart ass motherfucker. But we had to go up this steep ass hill, man. There's like 4-wheel drive vehicles, I think, that would have a hard time getting up there. And we just got down the road and just gave her a good, running 50 mile an hour start and made it up there somehow without popping a tire or bouncing through the goddamn windshield. But made it up there, and man, I had lots of good camping trips in that truck and just a good time. Good vehicle. Didn't ever give me problems.
Well, Fords were more reliable than that GMC out there back then.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh.
It's still running. It's still running. I got to give it that, but
Yeah, that Ford, is that the same blue one you had when I met you? That
it
Ford
is,
Ranger?
yeah. Yep.
And it's still going,
It's still going strong.
even though you don't have it.
Don't have it any longer. I sold it to a neighbor, and they sold it to one of their sons or daughters or something, and that was a nice ride.
I had like a 96 Ford Contour. Terrible. But my dad was like, I'm not going to buy you no nice car right away. Like,
I seen what you were going to do to my truck.
yeah, so when hold on, let me go back to that truck. I remember one of my first times, like in a parking space with that truck. I don't remember where we were, but there was a parking space and a sidewalk and grass and a tree. And I don't know why I was in first gear, But all I remember is I popped that clutch and it hopped the sidewalk and started heading for that tree. So that was probably one of my first experience, like learning how to adjust like the clutch. Because if you just pop off the clutch, I mean, you're going for a ride too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
in a hurry.
but yeah, I had a '96 Ford Contour, which was probably all but like $2,000, maybe $3,000.
Very nice.
Um,
It worked. It did,
It
it
did.
served you well.
yeah, through a small portion of high school. Yeah, yeah,
I think when I met you, you were driving around in like a '97 Blazer.
yeah. It was an '02 Blazer.
That was a pretty nice vehicle, I thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one served me well. I will say it did. And then I got rid of the Blazer for a stick.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Was your Blazer a stick shift?
No, it was an automatic.
automatic.
But I was doing a lot of commuting back then. So, I mean, I was putting on 100 miles a day. So when I got rid of the Blazer, we were going through that recession. And gas at that time, right at the beginning of the recession, was like it is now. I think it was like over $3.
Right.
And so I was like, I'm just going to drop it and get a car because I'm putting on like 100 miles a day. So I got one of the brand new Chevy Cruzes at the time,
Mm-hmm.
which was a 6-speed manual transmission. So it wasn't like the normal manual transmission I was used to. So reverse was left, all the way left and up.
Oh, that would throw me off.
Yeah. And there was like a little button you had to pull up to get it to go into reverse and then go up into it. So that way you didn't miss first and go up and know you were in first.
Throw it in reverse going down the interstate.
Yeah.
That'd be terrible.
Yeah. But I mean, that Academy Hill didn't scare me in that one by that time. So,
Yeah.
but I think I remember you having, what'd you have, an old Silverado? Was it a Silverado?
Yeah. So when I finally got rid of the Ranger, I wanted to get a full size truck, so I got a '97 Chevy Silverado, and that truck served me very well. I mean, it was 4-wheel drive, it had everything in it that I needed at the time, and for being a '97, I thought I was in tall cotton at that time. It was great. Nice, had a powerful engine V8 in it, and by the time I got rid of that truck, it was actually to the point where everything was falling apart.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Wasn't there a time when you took that thing into the mechanic and you about had all 4 tires fall off the ball joints or something like that?
Yeah, man. So I bought it out in Nebraska, and this person was like, I'm assuming some kind of a hunter, because I found all kinds of bullet shells in there when I was vacuuming it out and stuff. So the front end suspension was shot. Both ball joints were bad. Like, you could sit and look at the front of the truck, and it looked like the 2 front tires were angled out. So I ended up getting that replaced. That was a high dollar deal, but it did me good after that. It got to the point where the engine and stuff ran great. The transmission was great. Never had a problem with it. But it was everything around that was showing its age and falling apart, and it was starting to become unsafe to drive.
Yeah, that's because it was a old GM, buddy.
Then I had my wife and I had a baby, and I decided it was time to get something a little more reliable and safe. So I upgraded to a 2017 GMC Sierra 2500 HD crew cab. Lots more room for us, and I love the truck. Got to say, I'm very brand loyal.
You started with a Ford.
You know what? I never went back though. Just saying. Just no. They're not bad trucks.
I got an F-150. That's why we give each other shit. So,
and it's a nice looking ride.
Mine, thank you.
I'll give you that.
Oh, I thought you were talking about yours. No, I like yours too. I'd take yours if I had the opportunity.
What was there a time that your dad ever freaked out? I mean, I know you told me about the turning when you were learning how to drive. Was there any other times that does he listen to this podcast?
No, not yet.
So I'm sure there was more than one.
Shit, man. Oh man. You're gonna throw me on the spot on. I mean, there were so many times like we got up into like 4-wheel drive roads in the wintertime when we were hunting, and if you've ever been like on a true 4-wheel drive trail, like it's kind of sketch when you get
real bad.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you get into a stick shift and you're in the woods. Like, I mean, there were times like you'd get on steep hills where you would need like 4-wheel drive low, and I couldn't figure the son of a bitch out for my life. Like, and these are hairpin turns. You're taking it like you have to take it like 2, 3, 5 miles an hour, you know, and you get on inclines that are above like 10%. And so like when you're stopping to avoid trees and stuff, that's where like I talk about like that Academy hill, like I can't get it the fuck going. So here I am, I'm stuck between like these trees and trying to turn around and shit. And here I am stalling and jumping back and forth. And he'd fucking go, get the fuck out of the way and let me the fuck in there.
Like, that's like a typical dad move though. I think my dad said that to me a few times too.
So yeah, I mean, there were times like that where I couldn't fucking figure shit out, but you know, there's only one way to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes the best way is to just watch the old man do it. He's got some experience behind him.
Oh yeah. And speaking of sticks, do you remember, I don't know if we told this story, but this is one of my all-time favorites. You and I, when we were working together,
I know where you're going with this.
We were going to lunch. You and I wanted to go to lunch. And we had that old single cab Silverado that we worked in for one of our work vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the guys comes back. He wasn't a very bright guy.
No, this guy was like Barney Fife, but dumber.
And we were walking up the hill because we were like, well, he's not back, so we got to go take one of our own rides. Well, as we walked up the hill, guess who comes back? There he is in this truck all pedaling along, and you walk up to him at the window and he stops. Remember, he rolls down the window and you're like, hey man, can we get this so we can go out to lunch? And he's like, yeah, sure. And he hops out of the truck and he
dismounts the truck, leaves it in gear, didn't put the park and brake on or nothing. Dude's out of the truck, the door's open, and the truck just starts driving the fuck off.
And it starts rolling down this hill. And I was like, I'm going to watch this happen because it's not me. And 2, it's the dumbass. And I was going to let it roll through the fence because I knew it wasn't going to be me.
Mm-hmm.
And here you go. And you're like, oh shit. And you start chasing this son of a bitch.
I chased it down, man. I stopped a collision from happening. I jumped up in there and got control of that goddamn thing.
But the funniest thing was watching you run after this truck.
It was moving, man. I've never seen a truck drive by itself until that day. That was scary.
Oh my god. That was probably one of the best stories I think I have from there.
God, what a dumbass he was.
Oh, I was hoping you would just let it go.
If I could mention names on here, I would, just to warn everybody about this guy.
Yeah,
what a
he's medic now
jackass.
too, isn't he?
He's a firefighter, yeah, like a EMT medic. I wouldn't trust that son of a bitch to work on a sick dog.
I was hoping that truck was going to roll down that hill and through field 1.
Oh, I know you were. It would have kept going.
I know.
It would have went through 3 fences and a house.
I was ready for the show that day because I was cracking up about as bad as I was when I explained that story of sitting out on your front porch when you didn't know we were there.
Yeah, that was one of the top 5 for sure.
That's about as hard as I laughed on that because he just watched it too. Like he hopped out and he let you go. Like
he was like he didn't even understand what he did wrong. Absent-minded bastard.
It wasn't even in neutral.
No. It was in first gear.
He was like, "Here you go, Curtis."
What a fruitcake.
Oh my god, dude. That was a good one though. And then watching people learn to drive that truck though through the years with the new kids that all would come in at 18 years old because
oh dude, I don't know how many people. I mean, after I learned how, I bet I taught 10 people how to drive a stick in that same truck. So who knows how many people learned, and I don't think it ever saw a new clutch.
I did.
Did it? Did it get a new clutch?
Got one. It got at least one.
It had to have, because
Mm-hmm.
man, there was a lot of clutch slipping and grinding gears, and
Yeah.
it's amazing it was still driving.
Yeah. We told one story about that, I think, on here too, about that truck going down to 7-Eleven one day.
Yep.
You know, I mean, those are good memories, though. Listening to those gears grind.
You know, you want to talk about another something that's antiquated and you don't see anymore in vehicles is your dad's F-150 might have had it. Where to go to 4-wheel drive, you had to get out and lock the hubs in physically.
Oh, yeah.
There was a knob on each wheel, and you had to twist it, and then that put you in 4-wheel drive. There was no shifter in the truck.
Well, so his had it, but for his, it didn't start that way. So on that old truck I was talking about, it had the two sticks, right? It had the main stick, and then below it, back in the day, the 4-wheel drive still had the little stick down there to shift them. This one had that, but the 4-wheel drive kept going out in it. And so what made the 4-wheel drives more reliable were putting in the locking hubs. So in his, after he got tired of fucking around with the 4-wheel drive so much, he put in the locking hubs on it. And then so you'd have to get out, like you said, lock them in, but then you'd still have to get in and pull it. So if you didn't need 4-wheel drive, you could still stick it out and put it back in 2-wheel drive.
I gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Just to go in, you had to get out and lock them in, and then...
Yeah, but then you could still drive 2-wheel drive if you needed to.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, you know, so I'm kind of off topic of that, but I did attend a class today, and I think more people need to be aware of this. But as working in a community center and part of public education, I attended a class on youth mental health crisis management. So, like, how to identify a youth or a teen, young adult, what have you, if they are having a mental health crisis or a drug addiction, possible suicide. I will say that as the day and age that we live in, we don't have enough knowledge about that. And it is good to see that there's an organization out there that's doing something to try to prevent these kids from committing suicide.
Is that something your district puts together, or they hire somebody?
They hired a guy that goes around all over the country, and matter of fact, all over the world that teaches this class. But it really teaches you how to, like, a lot of times these kids just need somebody to sit down and listen to them.
Right.
They don't really need your advice. They're not looking for your advice, and they don't want it. But they just want somebody that cares to listen to them.
Well, I believe that. Well, with me working in education, I think as bad as mental health is right now, there's not enough support for our young youths in school.
No, absolutely not.
And that's because there's not enough funding in public education. I know, like, when you and I were going through school, I didn't see all the mental health crises that I'm seeing now.
No, not even.
It's amazing to me, like, watching all these kids and what they're dealing with on an everyday basis. I mean, there's so much, like, whether they don't know where they're going to get their next meal, mom and dad are fighting, mom and dad are divorced, mom and dad are doing something that's inappropriate for them to see at their behavior, or people are coming over, like, they're seeing all these things. And they're exposed to so much more, I think, than what we were.
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people, they may identify that there's somebody that looks like they may have a problem, but they just pawn it off and go, oh, they'll get over it.
No. And we don't have enough people to support all these needs that are happening right now for these children.
No, not at all. Not at all. Which was, back to my point, I was glad that they're doing something to try to educate more people about this. I look at myself as a father. If my daughter didn't want to come to me to tell me that she was having a problem and was considering suicide or something like that, I would damn sure hope that there was another adult that she was willing to talk to.
Yeah, I think, being in a position like mine, I get to see every kid in the school, and thankfully I get to build relationships with all those kids in need. So I know over time which ones need it the most because you get to see the behaviors.
You get to know them and see the ones that are crying at the drop of a hat. And
Yes. And, like it just shows like I didn't see these things when I was in school. And we have kids that'll like run away or run out of class or, that are fighting, elementary kids, or saying things that like I never thought I would say at that young of age. I may have thought it in my mind, but I never would say it. Like I could control myself,
Well, and like you look at, from when we were in school to now, the drugs that are available to kids now are so much more abundant. I mean, when I was in high school, I think for the most part, the biggest drug that people were really into was marijuana.
Yeah, and that was still a scary thing back then, though.
Yeah, and this guy was telling us today that marijuana is starting to be found in elementary schools and junior highs, and now high schools are starting to show more like hard drugs like cocaine.
It's been found in some of the schools I work in.
Yeah,
as elementary. So yeah, and even kids are bringing vapes. Elementary kids bringing vapes to school.
Yep. He did touch on that too. That's a big one right now.
Mm-hmm. So they're getting exposure to all these.
Yeah. So just to throw that out there, not to change the subject too much, but I did want to put that out, and hope that other people would kind of take it with a grain of salt and listen. And if you see a kid that's having these issues, please, if you don't want to talk to them, find somebody that will talk to them. Do something. Don't just let them try to get over it on their own.
Absolutely. And on that happy note, my friend, I think we got corrected pretty well this week.
I think so too, man. It was just good to try to remember how to drive a stick shift. And the more I thought about it,
yeah, that's understand why it's the new anti-theft device.
We could talk about locking hubs in, and I have the luxury of just pushing a button in my truck.
Yep, absolutely so. So until next week.
All right. I think we stand corrected. Please follow us on Spotify, Apple,
all the major
platforms.
Yeah.
We're going to keep making these episodes. Coming up on episode 10 here pretty quick. We're going to have to come up with something special for that. So
anything you guys want to hear us talk about as well. So,
all right. Well, till next time.
All right. Till next week, buddy. It was great going live with you this week.
Absolutely. We're going to try to make that another habit.
All right. Off we go.
Good night, everyone.